Good evening and welcome to this week in review. Tonight's stories include Lodge hosts seniors party, Lions and Lioness also held Christmas party for seniors, interview with our MHA Calvin Parsons. These stories plus community events, the BBS Playbill, Off the Rack, and more coming up after this.
Here at the War Apps, we return thousands of keys.
Not just car keys, keys of every size, every description.
Because they came to us with a War Apps key tag.
If you don't have a key tag, you never know where your keys will end up.
Our key tag service can often return your keys by courier.
Sometimes in the same day.
The War Apps Key Return Service, securing your peace of mind.
Before we begin our news for this week, we have some business to take care of from December 2002, beginning with the ACW and Altar Party held at the Calder Healthcare Center on Saturday, December the 21st. Members of the Altar and ACW gathered at the Calder Healthcare Center for their annual Christmas party for the residents. Belle Cloger, Travis Dumford, Norman Parsons, and Inri Young provided music for the afternoon. The ladies helped to sing a few Christmas songs and sometimes add a dance with the residents who were able to. The mummers paid a visit. Of course, they couldn't waste the good music and had to have a dance. Santa took time from his busy schedule to drop by and give out gifts to each of the residents. The ladies also served lunch. Everyone had an enjoyable afternoon. In keeping with tradition, the group then took their party to the Southwest Seniors Complex for more dancing and another lunch. On Saturday, December the 21st, the Lions and Lioness hosted their annual awards night, and we were invited to attend. The evening began with a welcome from King Lion Brad. Singing of O Canada was next, followed by the Lions' invocation, a moment of silence for the deceased Lions, Lioness, and Leos, and a toast to the Queen. Past King Lion Roger toasted Lions International. Lion Jim Marsden toasted the ladies, and the Lions' toast was said together. Lion Roger Ann said grace over the meal, and Lion Ron Green introduced the Id table. The evening continued with presentations of awards by past King Lion Roger Ann. Awards were given to Board of Directors, Lion Tamer Gordon Sims, Tail Twister Max Billard, Secretary Stan Kosser, Treasurer Rod Kosser, past King Lion Roger Ann, and Lion of the Year Jim Marsden. Lion Jim Marsden presented Patricia Sims with a birthday cake since she was celebrating her 40-plus birthday on December the 21st. Next on the agenda was the Lioness Year-In Report given by past Lioness President Ruth Tucker. A jacket and pin was given to Rita Sims for 25 years of service, 20-year pin to Lillian Carter, 10 years for Ann Calder, 5 years of service for Linda McDonald, 3 years for Dolores Green, and 1 year for Claudette Benoit, Evan Lushman, and Paulette Ann. Jim Marsden was presented with the liaison pin, and each of the Lioness were given a gift of appreciation. Everyone sang happy birthday to Patricia Sims. Sweaters were presented to Treasurer Sheila Ingram, Secretary Dolores Green, and past President Ruth Tucker. Each of the board members was given a keychain. Next up was the Lions Dart Awards presented by Lion Ron Green. The champs were presented with jackets with their name on the sleeve. T-shirts went to players with the most tons, most finishes, highest 3 darts, highest finishes, and the silver dart. All the dart players received ball caps. For 25 years of service, Max Pink and George Short received a jacket and a lapel pin. 30-year lapel pins went to George Ball, Rod Kosser, Hector Pollard, Clayton Ingram, Clarence Moulton, Clayton Meade, and Stan Kosser. Brad Dumford received his 10-year pin. King Lion Brad congratulated members who received awards, Lions of the Year Jim Marsden and Lioness for their successful year. He also wished Lioness President Marlene Vatcher a successful year. Marlene Vatcher congratulated everyone who received awards and wished everyone a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. The dinner concluded with return thanks by Ron Green and the singing of Ode to Newfoundland. A dance followed the meal. The Burgeo Fire Department held their annual Breakfast with Santa on Sunday, December the 22nd. To say the Breakfast with Santa was a success is an understatement. We went to the fire hall about 10:30 a.m. Business was then steady. At 12, when church was out, the place was filled to capacity. The Burnett's and firemen were busy seating their guests and taking their orders. The guests were enjoying visiting with friends, neighbors, and children were chatting with Santa. It was a relaxing atmosphere for those who attended. The Burgeo Fire Department extends many thanks to those who came out to support the Breakfast with Santa and made it such a wonderful success. Special thanks to Santa for spending time with the children and for taking time from his busy schedule to attend. Breakfast with Santa is very special for the children. As adults, we get to see the magic of Christmas through the eyes of the children.
Rudolph? Hey, Rudolph, wake up. It's Christmas again.
Ooh, Christmas! I'm ready.
Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer had a very shiny nose, and if you ever saw it, you would even say it glows. All of the other reindeer used to laugh and call him names. They never let poor Rudolph join in any reindeer games. Then one foggy Christmas Eve, Santa came to say, Rudolph, with your nose so bright, won't you guide my sleigh tonight? Then how the reindeer loved him as they shouted out with glee, Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer, you'll go down in history. Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride a one-horse open sleigh. Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride a one-horse open sleigh with Rudolph, 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 Rudolph. Christmas Eve, Santa came to say, Rudolph, with your nose so bright, won't you guide my sleigh tonight? Then how the reindeer loved him as they shouted out with glee, Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer, you'll go down in history.
Then how the reindeer loved me
as they shouted out with glee,
I'm Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer.
you'll go down in history. You'll go down in history.
Rudolph, Rudolph.
Come along, Rudolph. We must be on our way with all these toys to deliver before Christmas Day. Come along, let's go.
Stay tuned for more of This Week in Review coming up after this.
My name is Max and I'm a champ. My foot got caught in a lawn tractor accident. I wear my artificial leg to play soccer, to run, and lots of other stuff. If it can happen to me, it can happen to you. I go on safety walks and tell other kids to play safe.
Did you play anywhere near this busy road?
No! Spot the danger before you play. Play safe.
The new year began with a bang for our seniors. First, the LOA hosted a party for them on Thursday, January the 2nd. And the Lion and Lioness ended the Christmas season with another party for them on Monday, January the 6th. The LOA Seniors Party was well attended, with approximately 79 seniors being served with hot roast beef and peaches, cream, and cake for dessert. Master of Ceremonies for the evening, Joyce Green, welcomed everyone and invited Mrs. Elsie Rose to say grace over the meal. Next was the introduction of Ed Table guests. Mayor Ann brought greetings from the town and spoke about the services the lodge provides for the community through their Saturday matinees, teenage dances, and support for the seniors. The oldest seniors present, Mr. Thomas Anderson and Mrs. Pearl Warren, were asked to cut the cake, which was distributed by lodge members. Worthy Mistress Sheila Oxford brought greetings on behalf of the LOBA. Worshipful Preceptor Terry Rose brought greetings on behalf of both the LOL and the RBP. They then presented the oldest gentleman and lady with a gift. Reverend Dean Sellers returned thanks for the wonderful meal. The meal concluded with the singing of Ode to Newfoundland. When the dishes were cleared away, the seniors got down to the business of playing cards, while others sat around chatting with friends. At approximately 9:30 p.m., the winners of the cards were announced. First place went to Ken Ann, Aubrey Ann took second place, and Sadie Ann won the third place, or Booby as some people prefer to call it. Santa and Mrs. Claus paid a visit. These two always enjoyed dancing their way through the crowd. The best part was giving out gifts to the seniors, invited guests, and lodge members. Then the lights were turned down low for some dancing. It wasn't long before the mummers showed up. Rolla Foss delighted the mummers by playing a jig on the accordion for them. Did we mention that this was a free evening for the seniors with transportation provided? We congratulate the lodge members on another successful event. The Lions and Lioness hosted their annual seniors party on Monday, January the 6th, which is Old Christmas Day, traditionally called the last day of Christmas. This party was hosted by the Lion and Lioness is also a free service for our seniors, complete with free transportation and refreshments. 81 seniors attended this hot roast beef supper. Lion Ron Green was MC for the evening. Ron got the supper underway by inviting Reverend Russell to say grace over the meal. Speakers for the evening included King Lion Brad Dunford, Lioness President Marlene Batcher, Mayor Ann, and Ron Green for the Health and Welfare Committee. There was a draw for the door prize, which was won by Maud Pink. Lioness President Marlene and King Lion Brad presented the oldest gentleman, Don Bedridge, and the oldest lady, Hilda McDonald, with a gift. Reverend Russell concluded the supper with return thanks. While the dishes were being done, most of the seniors played cards. Others just chatted with friends. At approximately 10 p.m., the winners of the cards were announced. Sylvia Green took first place, Don Bedridge as second place, and third place, or the booby, went to Curtis Bungay. Santa and Mrs. Claus dropped by. They enjoyed a quick step dance before giving out gifts to all the seniors. Then it was time for them to head back up to the North Pole for a much-deserved rest. The lights were then turned down for the ladies and gentlemen to enjoy the rest of their evening with some dancing. Congratulations to the Lions and Lioness on another successful seniors party. On Friday of this week, we had an interview with our MHA, the Honorable Calvin Parsons. With us in our studio again today, our MHA, Calvin Parsons, and welcome back, Mr. Parsons.
Good to be here. Happy New Year to you and yours and everybody in Burgeo and theirs.
And thank you so very much. Well, we got a list of things to cover. Our cell phone coverage. Has anybody approached you lately about cell phone coverage more cell phone coverage for Burgeo.
Yes, in fact, it's an ongoing discussion. We managed to secure, as a result of approaching Alliant and Newtel some years ago, a couple of years ago, cell phone coverage along the coastal area, but that doesn't do any good for up in the highway itself, and particularly Peter Strides. It's an ongoing life safety issue if you're using the Burgeo Highway without cell phone coverage. So as recently as yesterday, in fact, I met with Dave McDonald here at BBS, who's involved in the technology angle of things, and he explained to me another proposal that we should try with Newtel. So Dave is going to put together a proposal as to how to use unidirectional versus omnidirectional antennas, and possibly expand the coverage up the Burgeo Road from the equipment that Newtel already has. I'm certainly not a techno wizard or anything, but Dave is going to put it in a proposal for me with some diagramming, and I'm going to meet with officials of Newtel to see if we can use that proposal. And if not, when do they intend to put the actual antennas that we do need along the Burgeo Road so that we can get cell phones, even if the proposal that Dave is giving me, if they consider that to be not workable.
Okay. So it's still ongoing?
Still ongoing.
Okay. Now, you're obviously aware that Mr. Paul Martin is planning a visit to Burgeo. What's your spiel on that?
Personally, I think he'll be the next Prime Minister of Canada. I think that's inevitable. He's coming here, no doubt, because Bill Matthews, who's the federal MP for Burin St. George's, has invited him here. I spoke to Mayor Hand and George Reed, who were helping organize the event for next Wednesday here in town. Unfortunately, I'm tied up in court myself in Corner Brook, and I won't be able to make it. The court date was set many months ago before I knew anything about Mr. Martin. But I will have a representative here, because I think it's important that the provincial government have a representative as well, given that we had the next Prime Minister of Canada in our midst. I think it's a great opportunity for people of Burgeo to get out and put a face on Burgeo for him, because we've often made visits to federal fisheries ministers and different bureaucrats and politicians when we're trying to secure things for Burgeo, whether it be things concerning the plant, whether it involves fisheries, whether it involves infrastructure projects. We need those people to understand where Burgeo is, what the people in Burgeo are about, and what we need. And the best way to do that is, particularly when you have a future Prime Minister here, is to get out and ask the important questions so that when he leaves here, he has some appreciation of what this community is all about. And later, when it comes to the Bill Matthews or the Calvin Parsons going back to meet with these people, it's nice to know that the top guy, the Prime Minister, is going to have an understanding of, yes, I was in that community, I met some of those people, and I know what their concerns were. Because there's nothing more difficult than trying to convince somebody who lives in central Canada, who's never been here on the Rock, to understand what we're about, where we live, what rural areas are about. So that's an opportunity, and I encourage people in Burgeo to come out in full force and welcome the man here, because he is the next Prime Minister, but at the same time ask questions that are of concern to this community, because many of the decisions made by governments are made by the federal government that impact us when it comes to funding, equalization, fisheries issues in particular. So take the opportunity to let him know who we are.
It's certainly a great opportunity for anyone who wants to let him know what we're about.
Absolutely.
Now, on a more local level, our hockey rink, how was things progressing with that?
The proposal was submitted. I was here in early December. I didn't get here, by the way. I must mention before I forget, the awards night on December the 19th. I have never missed an awards night in Burgeo, but unfortunately the house was open, and we were not allowed out, of course, out of the house when the house is open. But Joanne, my executive assistant, came down and tells me it was a very well attended and a very good event. And I delivered yesterday, actually, certificates to the award winners when I arrived here yesterday through the school. But we were here in December on the recreational matter. We met with council and the recreation committee, Glenn Dominey and people who were involved in that committee heavily. We discussed it. Oliver Langdon came into town with us at that time. MP Bill Matthews was here. Since that time, the proposal has been put together. Some preliminary costing was done on the proposal. The proposal was sent to Municipal and Provincial Affairs at Corner Brook. Doug Kendall and myself met again yesterday and this morning to discuss it. We spoke with Dan Ines, who was an engineer with Municipal Affairs. He tells us that there was one issue missing regarding some engineering fees that needed to be put in. So that's been now added to the proposal. I spoke to Mr. Langdon at length about this, not only after the meeting when we were here in early December, but many times since in the House in December. And I'm exerting my pressures because I think it's a needed piece of infrastructure here. That the Recreation Committee and the Council seem to be in favor of it if we can do it at the right terms and the right conditions in terms of costing. So we won't know a definitive answer until the budget issues get resolved, which will be March of this year. But I feel very, very positive about it, and I'll be continuing to make sure that Mr. Langdon sees things the way that we want to see them.
Well, certainly.
So I'm hoping that I'll be the bearer of some more positive news and definitive news sometime in March, early April on the rink project.
Well, it certainly sounds a very positive approach, and all parties seems to be have a very positive attitude. Now, do you think this is going to be an election year, and are you going to run?
Definitely going to be an election year, 2003. The Premier has acknowledged that. Constitutionally, we must call an election by November, or by February the 9th of next year anyway. So you wouldn't drive it out to the last few days. So yes, this will be an election year. Yes, I intend to run. In fact, the Liberal Association of Burgeo-Lapoil has already had their nominations back in September, October. And I sought the nomination. I was uncontested for the Liberal nomination. So I will be running. I anticipate the election will possibly be either in May, June of this year, or as late as September. It'll depend on what happens in the spring sitting with the budget and so on. The Premier may decide to wait until September. That's his call, obviously, as to when it will take place. He's indicated, I saw the news yesterday, that it will not be in the winter months. If you recall, the last one was held in February of 1999, and that makes it terrible in terms of, it's a terrible time of year to campaign in Newfoundland when you have snow-covered hills and streets and the candidates can't get around. The people who want to see the candidates can't get around. Yep. When you try to have a public rally or meetings, it's difficult to get around. Sometimes, last time, we lost days because of weather, and it's only a 21-day campaign, and if you strike a bad stretch of weather, it's not good. Okay. So I'm very pleased to hear that the Premier said there will be no winter election. So, but there definitely will be, and I'll definitely be in it.
Well, we certainly congratulate you on that, and obviously our studio is open for you anytime that you want to come down and make an appeal or make an announcement to the folks in Burgeo.
Appreciate that.
Now, there's been a lot of news lately about the fishery closing and closures and whatnot. Would that have, or if any, will that have any effect on us in the town? And, well, we got a new saltfish plant that's about to open now in April. Would that affect those people?
I don't anticipate it'll have any effect on the Seacrest venture with the salt fish project, which is due to start up this spring in 2003, because I don't expect, if there is a closure, it will be in the 3PS area, which runs from this way down to the eastward. I suspect if there is a closure, it'll be in the 3PN area, which is to the west of us, and to the Gulf area up the Northern Peninsula way. So I don't anticipate that there will be a closure that will affect this area in any case. So therefore we should be okay vis-a-vis Seacrest operations. But on the closure itself, because it does impact on certainly parts of Burgeo-Lapoil district, and I guess any closure is negative when it comes to the province. I'm amazed that we have a bunch of people in Ottawa running our fishery who seem to have, and the longer I'm in this occupation, the more convinced I am that they have very little understanding of what the fishing industry is about, or sometimes I'm concerned whether they even care about it. We've got little response to the seal issue. We have talks now, and announcements actually, that they're going to close 3PN was leaked from a meeting in last fall without telling anybody, before the science is even concluded, before the Fisheries Resource Council has concluded its hearings and submitted its report. We have the federal minister talking about possibly closing 3PN. And I just wonder, like, who's in charge of the ship? It seems sometimes that the ship has been abandoned and there's nobody in charge of it. There's nobody on it sometimes when it comes to DFO. So it's very disconcerting. We've provincially, the Premier called an emergency debate when that information was leaked. All parties, the Leader of the Opposition, as well as the Leader of the NDP, the Provincial Minister of Fisheries and the Fisheries critics, for example, We had an emergency debate in the House of Assembly on it. We condemned such an action being taken, certainly before we even had the science and the FRCC report. And they've had meetings, follow-up meetings, since with Minister Thibeault in Ottawa, and there's been follow-up meetings in St. John's again with the federal minister, and the committee on December the 20th passed. So the province is there saying, if you're going to do this stuff, don't you think you ought to figure out, first of all, what the facts are? And once you have the facts, maybe then if somebody can read the facts properly, who understands the facts and understands the information that you have, once you have it, maybe then you could be in a position to make a decision and not before. And if the ultimate decision is closure of 3PN or any area, the next thing you have to turn your attention to is, how are we going to look after the people who are negatively impacted because of the closure? And nowhere in the information that I saw leaked was there any concern given to addressing the problems that are caused. We don't need another 1992 situation. We need people, and certainly we've got a precedent with 1992 when it comes to assistance to people. So you don't have to make a decision without having the information, and if you're going to make a decision with the information, for God's sake, look after the people who are going to be impacted by it and design the support programs properly, which they, to date, have given no attention to as far as we can understand.
Do you think this is a case of, because first when I heard the news, it was almost like they're crying wolf again, you know, the story of the boy who cried wolf? That's what it seems to me, they're crying wolf again. And the fishermen will say, you know, they don't know what they're talking about. There's fish out here. They're taking reports from areas where traditionally there's no fish, and it's just a very confusing thing, because it seemed right out of the blue that this closure came about.
Confusion sometimes seems to be the operative mode of DFO. As I say, they've done absolutely excuse me, nothing for the seals issues. They've done nothing when it comes to custodial management on the nose and tail. In 3BS, 3PN area, we're talking of closure without the science being done. But on top of that, they open up an area 4VN over in Nova Scotia to dragger fishing again. Just before Christmas here in this area, they allowed fishing on the Burgeo banks for draggers again up to 50,000 50,000 pounds per dragger. So here we are talking closure. The anecdotal evidence from the fishermen who fished on the Burgeo banks is that they're getting some of the biggest catches they ever had. Yet they're saying that we don't have any fish out on the Burgeo banks. Meanwhile, they're allowing the fishing in 4VN, which traditionally in January, February, March, when they are now allowing the dragger fishing, is, from what I understand, the time when there's normally the reproductive stages of the codfish. So you're allowing draggers to go into the reproductive zone during the reproductive times and let them fish with draggers. I'm at a loss as to, again, who's thinking for DFO, and I seriously question sometimes if there is anybody thinking. At the very best case scenario, you have utter confusion between what one piece of that department tells you and someone else, and it seems to be contrary to all of what the fishermen are telling you. And I think most times you can put stock in what the fishermen say, because they're the people who had the history, they're the people who have actually worked it, and they know when the fish run and where the fish are and what the cycles are. So maybe sometimes the Department of Fisheries ought to take some information from the fishermen, and not from scientists who operate out of Rimouski, Quebec.
I think so, and I totally agree with you, and I'm sure many of our residents will agree. I think they're just whistling in the dark if they don't listen to the fishermen.
Absolutely.
Now, is there anything else you would like to add?
Just like to say that I was very pleased to be back again. We're doing another clinic this morning. I've managed to do clinics pretty consistently since I got elected, and I think that's good, because phone calls are one thing, and making personal appearances at public functions is another thing. But it's always good to have the clinics, because people often want to sit and talk one-on-one and discuss their problems, and the clinics allow us to do that. So I'm back here again. I came in yesterday, here today for the clinic. So it's good to be here. You see a lot of people. The mood seems good. The weather's not too good. It's cold, and I got the flu and whatever, but you got to live with that. That's part of winter too. But it's good to be here, and it's good again to chat with yourself and the people of Burgeo.
Well, it was our pleasure to have you, and welcome back anytime.
Thank you.
Also on Friday, we spoke to Alistair Hann about the upcoming visit for Mr. Paul Martin. We have with us in our studio today Mayor Ann. Welcome again once Marianne.
Hi, Marie.
We're on a different level today.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, now, obviously, most of the residents know that Mr. Paul Martin is planning to be in town next Wednesday from 2:30 to 3:30, I think, meeting at the Community Center meet and greet. Would you care to tell us how that came about?
Well, it was, I think it was sometime during the summer. Bill was there, or I was meeting with Bill anyway. And he looks up and he says, you know, I'm going to bring Paul Martin into Burjo. And I sort of smiled at it, and I said, well, why would you bring Paul Martin into Burjo? And so, yeah, I know you're going to bring Paul Martin into Burjo. Yes, I am. He said, I'm serious. I'm going to bring Paul Martin in and show him Burjo. Well, I said, well, it's fine with me. So I really didn't give it much thought at that time. And then November, I believe, when he was there for the Remembrance Day parade and so on. And again, he said, I'm going to bring Paul in, he said, in the new year. And at that time, I thought it would be the summertime or something like that. And so anyway, it was just, well, a few days ago, I got a phone call, and he said, well, no, he said, Paul is coming in. He said, Paul and me are coming in on January 15th. And I said, okay, good enough. He said, so would you try set it up for us? And I said, well, I'll do what I can. And so that's about how it came about, as far as I know.
Okay, so here we are.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, what, if anything, do you think this would achieve for Burjo?
Well, you know, it may not achieve anything, you know, Marie, but there's probably beyond a word of a doubt, as the way the political scene looks right now, that, you know, early in 2004, as far as right now they're looking at February of 2004, Mr. Chrétien is going to step down as Prime Minister and leader of the Liberal Party in Canada. I think beyond word of a doubt that Mr. Martin is going to be successful in that nomination to be leader of the Liberal Party. There's, to my knowledge anyway, there's approximately 2 more years left in the mandate of the Liberal Party to be the governing party of Canada. So therefore, you know, you're looking at Mr. Martin at least being Prime Minister of Canada for 2 years. He's coming in here, no doubt. That now, how the process is going to be to elect the next leader of the Liberal Party, I don't know. I don't get in that thing. I'm not a member of the executive board of the Liberal Party or anything like that. But whether it's going to be a phone-in ballot or whatever, no doubt he's going around and trying to strum up a bit of support to get him to that position. Now, I think by coming into Burjo, really. Well, I personally consider it an honor to have him come into Burjo. And therefore, I think if our MP could be persuasive enough to get him to come into Burjo, then I don't think we should let him down by no one turning up when Martin do arrive. So for that reason, it'll more or less put a face on Burjo, and it'll give our MP a chance to remind him of the town that he visited and so on. And according to Bill, what Bill is telling me anyway, is that he'd like to take Martin, he's taking him into Bellorum, and he's taking him into Burjo. He'd like to show Martin 2 typical Newfoundland outport towns. 2 towns that's Erting, and more or less put a face onto it so that after he is Prime Minister, and if Bill do go to him for some support, for something for Burjo, that he can sort of put a face on the town that Bill is talking about.
Okay. Well, that in itself it can be beneficial because, sure. I mean, let's face it, Paul Martin is, well, no flyboy in the wind. He's a pretty
high profile.
Exactly, and to have him come into town, like you say, itself is pretty honorable to have him come here. And Burjo and Bellorum as fishing villages, and it seems that a lot of people in the Ottawa area, you know, in politics, they don't know fishing villages.
That's right.
Fishing towns. They don't know. I think sometimes they think that we're still in the backwoods.
Well, yes,
you know.
and Well, it does give him a chance, you know. It does give us a chance probably to express to him a way of life, and a
Yes.
way of life that probably doesn't suit a lot of people, but
Right.
which is very dear and near to the people who
That's
do
right.
carry on this way of life.
That's right. Now, I believe you spoke earlier today with some of Mr. Martin's workers, and they're sitting it up, and it's called a meet and greet. Now, will that be set up? Will there be opportunity? Will they be? Mr. Martin will give a speech, and then people will have a chance to ask him questions, or will it just be standing around chatting? Do you know what the forum will be?
Well, the way we're trying to set it up, Marie, and as far as I know, that met with the approval of the person who was in here today, Mr. Mark Watton. We're hoping to get about 10 to 15 minutes first when they arrive.
Okay.
We'd like to go to the town hall, that's the council, and not over 15 minutes, and that'll depend, you know, whether he gets in on time. Maybe we won't get to the town hall at all. And the reason for that is that we'd like to have 10 to 15 minutes to appraise Mr. Martin on what has happened in Burgeo since 1992. That's number one. And number two, we'd like to tell him, fill him in on the history of Burgeo, its involvement in the groundfish fishery, its historical involvement. It was a pioneer in that fishery, and so we'll get a chance to put that to him, and also explain to him how we feel that we've been done. And so we just like to have 10-15 minutes before that, before the main meeting. Then go back to the community center. It's my understanding he'd like to mingle, shake hands, speak to the people, but he'll undoubtedly Mr. Matthews will have a few words, and then Mr. Martin will have a few. I think it'd be a very short speech. That's as far as I know. And then it'll be thrown open for a few questions, half a dozen questions or so. And then he'd like to shake hands with as many people as possible and greet them and so on. And now that's the general, what I've got of it.
Okay.
His estimated time of arrival is around 2:30, and his departure is 3:30, 1 hour. Of course, anyone who's familiar with helicopters or flying, if you get a tailwind, you'll be there early. If you get a headwind, you'll be there late. So that'll depend, you know. So I would say to the people, if you do turn up at 2:30 and he doesn't arrive until 2:45, well, don't get impatient. You know, these are things that's out of everybody's control and so on.
Okay. What would you like to see as mayor of this town? Mr. Martin is coming to visit. He may be, and probably will be, the next Prime Minister of Canada. What would you like to see come from this visit?
Well, I don't expect anything, to be quite honest with you, to come from it, other than for us to more or less let Martin know where Burgeo is in Canada. And I'd like to see, some people have got a lot of concerns with our place in Canada and so on and so forth. When the floor is thrown open for questions, I would hope that someone will get up and ask the questions, you know. There's a lot of issues on the table. There's gun control. It doesn't really mean you got to stick with the fishery. I mean, I'm certain that I will be asking one pertinent question anyway regarding the fishery. And whatever people got on their minds, just where does Martin stand in the old scheme of things, and if he were Prime Minister. He's not, but if he was, you know, what's your stand on this? What's your stand on custodial management of the nose and tail, and so on and so forth?
Okay. So the primary thing for the mayor in this is to give knowledge and educate Mr. Martin into where Burgeo is, the way of life that Burgeo lives, and to give him something that when someone says Burgeo, he says to us, yeah.
That's the old idea behind it.
Okay. Now, what do you expect from the residents? What would you like to see from the residents?
Well, like I say, the main thing I like to see from the residents is that they do turn up, you know, and if there's would like to bring a little placard or something and write something onto it with regard to our town that makes a lot of sense and so on, I can't see too much wrong with that. Might not be that much room in the hall, but there'll be room outside to stick them in the snow, sort of what we did one time before. I believe it was for Jerry Reed when he came and so on. And you know, just a portrayed message that a lot of our people are gone, working, and we'd like to have some employment here in Burgeo, and that we're part of Canada, and we'd like to earn our living right here in Burgeo and stay here in Burgeo.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, that's just about it. Just only to tell the people that I really would appreciate you if you would take that time around about 2:30 on Wednesday, January the 15th, and come out and greet Mr. Martin. And I'd like for that, when it's all over, that Bill Matthews will be able to jog Mr. Martin's memory and say, Burgeo, and he says, oh, where's Burgeo? He said, well, that's a town that got a population of 1,800, and the day you went there was 2,000 turned out. You know, that would really be great. So that's how optimistic I likes to be, but I don't usually work out that well.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you know, I once again, you know, I'm pretty proud that Mr. Matthews recommended that Paul would come to Burgeo, because no doubt there's going to be very few outports of our size that he's going to be visiting. And he's got his ear this week, and I got no doubts as the year progresses, Mr. Martin's going to have to spend some time with Mr. Hefford, who's also supporting Mr. Martin. And I don't know who the other Newfoundland MPs are supporting. I think the majority, except for Mr. Byrne, is supporting Mr. Martin. So, you know, it's, yeah, I think it's, we should consider ourselves pretty honored that, that we're going to have Mr. Martin for 1 hour.
Okay.
You know, okay?
Yeah, well, thank you very much for joining us today.
Okay. Thank you, Marie.
Stay with us for Off the Rack, the community events, and the BBS Playbill, all after this.
Feel the flame forever burn, teaching lessons we must learn to bring us closer to the power of the dream. Feel the flame, teach lessons we must learn to realize the power of the dream.
BBS Playbill. Try your luck on Wednesday by playing Monaraki TV Bingo. Join Pans and the gang for 2 stories, a craft, and lots of fun on Saturday morning at 11 a.m. on Pansy's Garden. And I'll be here again next week with This Week in Review. For This Week in Review, I'm Marie Rose. Good night and God bless.